Good evening. It's nice to see all of you. The world is a book, and those who do not travel read only one page. This famous quote by St. Augustine has really inspired so much of my life, and I really am glad to be here to share that with you today. When I was a child, my family liked to visit the beaches along the East Coast, and I just really love these trips. We would go to Ocean City, we would go to Atlantic City, we would go to Virginia Beach, and I just loved learning about the ocean and seeing the sea creatures who were there, and getting to see the people and the relaxed attitude of the way that they would go when they were beachgoers, and I was just really, have always loved that. When I was 13, my family decided to go on a longer vacation. We were going to take a cross-country trip, a driving vacation to Phoenix, Arizona. A lot with young preteens in the car, of course. We got to go to lots of, they really carefully selected our destinations, and we went to the Arch in St. Louis. We drove through Broken Arrow and the Panhandle of Texas, and we got to see the Cadillac Ranch and Crater Lake, New Mexico. And finally we arrived at the Grand Canyon, which was just truly awe-inspiring to see what a river could create. And so it was these adventures with my family that really established the first chapter in my book and my enjoyment for traveling. Later, when I was a graduate student, or when I was an undergrad at Ohio State University, I was president of an organization known as Golden Key National Honor Society. And through Golden Key, I had the opportunity to travel to Atlanta for some leadership training, and we got to hear world-class speakers. And we also got to stay at a Ritz-Carlton hotel, which had never been part of my family's experience before. So I not only loved hearing the great speakers, but also when I went to my room at night, there had been a turn-down service, and there was an orchid on my nightstand and mint on my pillow, and I knew that traveling would always be something that I wanted to do. Following that time, when I was in graduate school and I had finished my master's thesis at Kent State, my advisor decided that we should apply for a conference that was taking place in Bordeaux, France. And so I had not traveled to Europe at all, and this gave me the chance to open a new chapter in my travelogue and journey to Europe with several of my colleagues from the National Writing Project. This allowed me to have one of the very best experiences of my travel journey, and also one of the worst wrapped into the same event. We at first went and we presented our research in Bordeaux, France, and that went great. And what I didn't remember from all the years I had taken French, which would be 4 years in high school and 3 more in college, was the fact that the first 2 weeks of August are always the vacation or the holiday. And I just did not realize the enormity of how much the country would pretty much shut down so that everybody could go on vacation. It's just not a very American concept. And so after our presentation, we went to find something to eat, and literally the only thing available and open was in the hospital on the University of Bordeaux campus, and not even the hospital dining facilities, but the vending machines. And so I got very pouty at this point. Those of you who know me are like, I can imagine. And convinced my friends that we should use our Euro passes and find a beach and go to the beach and get a really fabulous meal. So we did journey to the beach, and we had one of the best travel experiences I've ever had. We not only got to relax on the beach for a while, we had an excellent dinner. We had something called fruits de mer, which would be a seafood platter. I also had the best creme brulee I ever had in my life, and I was so happy last night when I found this picture of it that you can't believe. So I really was having just the best day. We watched the sunset over the ocean, and after the sunset, we went back to the train station to get on the train to return to Bordeaux, which was about 50 miles away, to find that my French skills were not in such great working order, because although we read the train timetable very carefully, we had not paid very close attention to the fact that there was a footnote at the bottom that said that it would not be working the week of the vacation, so the trains were shut down for the night. After a very expensive cab ride back to Bordeaux, France, I realized that on your travel vacations you need to be both innovative and flexible and resilient when things don't work out the way you want. But it did not deter me for keeping to travel. After that, I was teaching at Solon, and as a young teacher here, I had an older teacher come to me and invite me to open the next chapter in my travelogue, and that was to begin chaperoning. So there are some teachers who are like, never, I'm not interested in doing that. But for me, it opened up a really great chapter, and I have just had such fabulous experiences with it. The first trip that I chaperoned was to Washington, D.C., and I had the best time on this trip. We boarded buses with about 200 students. The trip was at the high school at that time, and when we did, I was able to, it was the pre-cell phone days, right? So I packed a bag with all my favorite things to do: books to read, magazines to read, crossword puzzles. All my teacher friends were on the bus because all the young teachers were chaperoning, so that was really fun. The kids seemed to be fun and just excited to be going somewhere and doing something the last few weeks of the school year. And so then we arrived in DC, and the best thing happened. We got to go to all of the national monuments and see the Smithsonian museums, and we got to visit the Holocaust Museum and the Vietnam Veterans War Memorial. And it was just a fabulous time. And so Sue Bergen so inspired me that since that time, I have been on I have chaperoned 27 trips in my 27 years of teaching. I took the kids to, on a mock trial trip to Columbus once, 3 trips to DC. Those of you who know me, many of you out there have been on the Boston trip with me. So there were 21 years of Boston trips, and 2 fabulous trips to Europe. So a few of those pictures would be, there was Arlington National Cemetery from Washington, D.C. You'll recognize this from Boston, Paul Revere, and the Old North Church in the background. My husband Mike and I in Portofino, Italy. That was a really awesome place that we later see in movies when they just want to establish wealth, wealth, wealth. So it was good to kind of have a visual of that. And then on to the next chapter. So later, after I had been teaching for a while, I began teaching AP, and many of my students are here, so thank you for coming. And as the AP teacher, eventually I got to go and grade the AP tests. And my AP reading was in Daytona Beach, Florida. And so my family helped me to turn this into another travel adventure, because I would go and grade the essays, and they would come and stay with me and play on the beach all day. And then after the time of the reading was done, I would be able to go and visit Disney World with my nephew. And just having 8 years of great experiences at Daytona Beach and Disney with my nephew Tanner was a really, really phenomenal experience. Then I became an AP consultant after being an AP reader, and the difference there is that then I go and present at conferences and have a chance to tell teachers ideas and strategies that have worked with many of you in my class and share those ideas on that bigger stage. So first I was, pretty local. I would go to Cincinnati and Columbus and Detroit and Grand Rapids, Michigan, and maybe Chicago for a very exciting place. And then eventually I decided I could wrap this into some of my other interests. So as they'd send me the schedule for where I might want to present, I would say, oh, well, I've not been to Kansas before. That is my first choice. And so then I would ask for Kansas and Iowa, and I don't think I had much competition for that one, maybe. And so I got to go to Iowa and Nebraska, and every time I try to get them pushed up against a weekend so that I could take my own days while I was there and then visit all of the sites in those locations. It was a cold winter evening one night in January, I think it was probably 2012, and when I opened my email, the headline said, or the line said, subject line, would you like to present an APSI in the South Pacific? Yep, that would be my answer. I was like, what? Me? I mean, I'm a high school teacher. You don't go into teaching English thinking that you were going to get to travel the world. So I was like, oh my gosh, what? Please send me details. So when I looked at my map on my iPad, at the time there was a little pin that showed up. I Googled Saipan, and this is what showed up. It was completely water. I don't even think there was the word Saipan. There was literally the pin of the map and just a red dot. And I was like, okay. And so like both fear and excitement at the same time. But it was just too big of an opportunity to miss. And so I booked my flight and prepared my presentation and headed to Saipan. And the first night I got there, it's part of the Northern Marianas Islands. This little island you see here isn't even Saipan, it's actually Guam. Saipan is somewhere hidden under the world. It's really small. But I got there and I was just like, how can they have an airport and a runway? And I got there and it was night and I found the hotel and drove there and everything. And the next morning I woke up and excitedly went to the door to see where I was. And this was my view. So those of you wondering why I've been to Saipan 4 times now are clearly convinced that it's a very beautiful place. So not only beautiful in the landscape, as you can see here from this picture, I have another beach picture. I had to show you this one because in my dorm room, I swear, I had a picture of these palm trees, and then I went to the beach one day, I was like, oh, it's my poster. So I was so excited. And this actually has been my iPad backdrop the entire time because I'm just like, oh my gosh, I was there. This is amazing that I actually got to see this. But the real beauty of Saipan is actually not the palm trees, but the people. So I just love these teachers. They are so dedicated to what they do. These were some of the students that were in my class. You can tell they treated me like a queen. I probably didn't mind that part of my visit either, getting treated like royalty while I was there. Several of these people came back and came to my classes multiple times when I was there, and I was just so enamored and privileged to get to teach them. So, in addition to this, I also had the chance to travel to Hong Kong. I got invited to teach at the Hong Kong International School, and that was just really exciting. And I remember shortly before I went on that trip, my mom called and she's like, your dad wants to talk to you. And I was like, he does? It sounded a little ominous, so I wasn't sure. I'm like, okay. I'm like, well, I hope he wants to go on my trip with me. She's like, he does. I was like, amazing. So my dad went with me to both Hong Kong, and then we extended that trip as well, and we had the chance to go to Beijing. So one of the, I don't know, I'm at a loss for words. Anyway, aside from Beijing, and then we did get to go to the Great Wall of China, which is just one of my very best travel memories too, getting to go with my dad. After that time, through AP, kind of concurrently, I guess, I had been inspired by several people that I knew. There was a teacher at Solon who had been to 47 of the 50 states, and there was an article about her in the Courier, and that was just kind of interesting. And so then shortly after that, I went to a student's graduation party, and Carolyn Repko they had a picture in their house of them, and they had been to all 50 states. The parents had decided by the time that they graduated from high school, they wanted to take their children to all 50 states. And so there was a picture with them all, I can't do this with 2 things in my hands, but signed for 50. And they were at the Four Corners Monument. And so at that point, I was truly inspired. If someone could do this by the time they graduated from high school, surely I could accomplish this in my lifetime. So I started booking more and more of my AP adventures in far-off lands, and every time the email came, I would say, ooh, Mississippi, I haven't been to Mississippi yet. What states are near Mississippi? And so that would inspire a lot of my travel adventures too. So through this, I was able to do a Lee's Retreat, Lee from the Civil War. Well, there was my map that I came home and colored in to figure out. You see I'm getting very close. This is my actual map that I use. I'm getting very close. My friend Sue Bergen, who inspired my first chaperoning activity, and also when I'm on, she's the one who really wanted to go on the Lee's Retreat, and we went to all the various battlegrounds of the Civil War at the end, and with Appomattox being the grand finale. There you see her again on one of the battlefields. And then later we went on a civil rights tour when we went to Mississippi, and we also went to Arkansas nearby, and we went to Alabama. So that's actually the bus that Rosa Parks sat on. We also got to be in Martin Luther King's jail cell, where he wrote a letter from Birmingham jail. And we went on the Pettus Bridge. So if you've seen the movie Selma, this bridge features prominently in that. And so then we drove from there to Montgomery on the same march that the protesters would have followed. So I love that I've seen this many parts of our country and just had a chance to understand these depths and nuances. My more recent exploration of our country has included a lot of the national parks. For the past 2 summers, another teaching friend is available in the summer and travels with me. Her name is Tracy, and so we have went to more of the national parks. You might notice Pearl Harbor there. I went there on a trip back from Saipan. My plane landed in Hawaii, and I knew I should just fly home, but could not force myself to do that, so I just spent a week. Oh, my mother-in-law is just as amused as you are. So this is in Montana, Glacier National Park. I presented in Washington State and then went to Idaho, pardon me, and then on to Montana to Glacier National Park. This is Hidden Lake. Last summer, Tracy was game enough to do a wild circuitous route, and we went from Des Moines, Iowa. This is in Des Moines. In case you didn't know what you wanted to see in Des Moines, now you have a goal, right? There's a really cool sculpture garden there. We went from there to Nebraska, up to South Dakota, through the Badlands, to North Dakota to Teddy Roosevelt National Park, and eventually we wound down and went to Yellowstone, which had been a goal on my list for a long time, and I really enjoyed that trip with her. And then we kind of concluded with the Grand Tetons, which were just more amazing than I ever imagined. And I actually kind of climbed one. You can see not to the very peak, as you would know, with me, but we had a fabulous time on our trip. So I have 2 remaining states. Did you catch what they were from when you saw my map? Were you paying close attention? Yes, Alaska is one, and the other one's very tiny, the first state. What is it? Oh, Delaware. Yes, I've been to Rhode Island with some of you actually on the Boston trip. So Delaware is my other one. So I have 2 remaining states and 2 years in which to get there. So hopefully I'm making good progress, and I will do that. I have just discovered so much about our country and other countries and people and flavors through my travels. I've learned more about literature. I understand what the Custom House is now, which I did not when I first started teaching the Scarlet Letter. It really took until I got there to know that, so at least I can share that knowledge with you in class. I understand what a walled city is and how Romeo was able to be banished from the city. I know when I had the chance to teach Romeo and Juliet, the kids would say, how was he kicked out of the city? And I really didn't know until I visited Assisi in Italy and saw the big walls with the big rolling door to how could you lock someone out of a city, but now it makes complete sense. So I really love that I've had those experiences that I can share with many of you in class. And truly my wish for you is that you will get to travel, that you will see bears and turtles in their natural habitats, that you will get to journey to various cities in Europe and see the way that Paris and London and Rome have such a longer history than the United States, which you really can't know until you get to visit there. And also that you will get to make great foods in each city. I traveled with Mrs. Mick one time, and so we went and we learned how to make gumbo and pralines in New Orleans. Later I took a class on how to make sushi in Tokyo, and so just get to see the sights and the sounds of flavors and all those things, and really just journey to the tallest building in each city that you visit. So I hope that I have inspired you to book some travel of your own and to write your own story. Your adventure awaits.